Hello, everyone.
Hello.
It's great to see some familiar faces of those who were able to join us for the previous two episodes, and a big welcome to anyone joining us for the first time.
Hang on, Jamie. What if I'm one of those that missed one of the previous episodes?
Fear not, Desmore. This is not a huge problem, as we'll be covering different aspects of our leave module in this episode and the next. These webinars were also recorded and have been uploaded to YouTube, and the links to these past two episodes can be found on our blog.
Cool. I also noticed that we've got some members of our audience dialing in from other parts of the world. Would this webinar be beneficial to them?
Certainly. While we're working on the South African system today, there's very little difference between the leave modules for each of our regions, with the main difference being legislative compliance. This episode will specifically focus on leave reports, leave adjustments, leave take-on balances, and leave paid out.
Great. So although Brandon and Kylie will be working on the South African system that's built to be compliant with South African legislation, the functionality is identical across our different regions. It may be worthwhile at this stage to give us a little background, Jamie, on why we decided to launch webinars in the first place. Would you be able to fill us all in?
Sure. So the decision to start broadcasting webinars was made after receiving from feedback from our customers that got us thinking about how else we could provide support. We identified that leave in general is a big contact driver to our support team. So the decision was made to pilot the series focusing on SimplePay's leave module in its entirety. Going forward, we're looking at hosting webinars more regularly, and we'll cover topics put forward by you, our valued customers.
That's amazing, and I'm sure everyone is as excited by that as we are. Jamie, you mentioned that there'll be one more episode of the Leave series. Can you tell us a little more about that one?
Absolutely. So episode 4 is our final episode of the Leave series, and it's scheduled for the 24th of February. This session is entirely devoted to leave management on the employee self-service module. It's an extremely powerful feature of our system that really does take the admin out of managing leave as a leave administrator, Desmond.
I completely agree, Jamie. And the best part of this is that it's completely free. If you haven't used the employee self-service functionality before, it's also worth mentioning that there's a SimplePay app available on iOS and Android, and that is absolutely free to employees to download and use as well.
That's right, Desmond. After this webinar, I'll be sharing some more info on where the app can be downloaded from and how to get started on employee self-service.
So, Brandon, to get started, if I have just joined SimplePay and I'm moving over from a different system and I want to migrate my information, but specifically the leave balances for my employees, what would be the best way to go about doing that?
Okay, thanks for the question, Kylie. So SimplePay does have a leave take-ons functionality, and this does allow you to bring your leave balances over to SimplePay. Because most people or most companies, when they do join SimplePay, it's not the first time that they're operating. So it's not the first time that they're appointing people. Maybe you've had your company for years and you've either been capturing leave manually. So maybe you're using a pen and paper system, or maybe you're using an Excel spreadsheet or Google Sheet, or maybe you're using another system and you've finally seen the light and you've decided to move it to SimplePay. So in order to capture take-on balances, you can do this both individually and in bulk. So if you had to do it individually, you would do it from an employee's profile. But in most instances, you're going to be doing it in bulk because you want to capture your leave take-ons for all of your employees.
Right.
So to do it in bulk, you're going to go to employees, and then you're going to go to bulk actions. Now, when you're on the bulk action screen, you're going to look for the leave section. So on my screen, it's on the top right, but it could be in a slightly different place depending on what device or screen you are using. And we're looking for the section that says take-on balances. Now, when you get to the take-on balances screen, you'll see at the top there are a bunch of universal filters. This allows you to filter your employees so that you only have a specific group if you're only wanting to capture take-on balances for a specific group of employees.
Cool.
And then we've got a drop-down menu here that allows you to specify what is the leave type that you want to capture the take-on balances for. And then we've got the take on balances screen with a list of all of your employees, as well as the various fields that you can populate.
Cool. So as per the previous episodes, I think I would like to focus on the annual leave tab.
Sure.
There are quite a number of columns on this page. So again, if I'm migrating that data, specifically the number of days of leave that my employees have when I move over to the new system, when I've seen the light, I've moved over to SimplePay. What do I need to do on the screen?
Okay, so in most instances, your company would have a list of the employees and their leave balances at a specific date. So
Right.
maybe you have pulled a report from your previous system and you pulled that report at a specific date and you've got a leave balance at that specific date. Or maybe you've got an Excel sheet or you've done it manually and you've calculated the leave balance up until a specific point in time. In that instance, you only need 2 columns, and that would be this 4th column, or the first one that you can actually fill in, and the last column. So this first column is going to be the date that you're going to enter, which in this instance would be the date that you pulled the report or the date that you've calculated the balance up until.
Okay.
And then the last column is going to be the employee's leave balance at that particular date.
If I understand the end of, sorry, Brandon, you know, Zoom. If I look at the end of take-on period, or understand that correctly, if I started to use the system, let's say, I guess the 1st of May, 2021, would the end of take-on period then be the last day in April?
Yes. So
Okay,
in this
cool.
instance, for my company, Peter Pan, I'm going to start using SimplePay on the 1st of March 2022. So that's actually the start of the new tax year. And so I've pulled up a report from my previous system at the end of February 2022. Okay, so the 28th of February. So I'm just going to enter that date. I'm going to then copy and paste it down to all of my employees. And then in the last column, I'm going to say, okay, what was Tinkerbell's leave balance? So maybe she had 10 days on the 28th of February. Maybe Wendy had 3 days. Maybe Captain Hook had 2. And let's say Peter Pan had 0. In which case, that's it, right? So it's just the end of take-on period, the date that you got the report or that you calculated the balance up until, and then the actual closing balance that you had calculated.
Okay. And once the closing balance overrides, once we've entered those numbers, or those amounts rather, how does leave accrue following this process? Yeah.
Okay, so the system would actually know that, okay, at this date, these are the leave balances, and then it would look at the leave policy that you've set up, and let's say that you set it up to accrue leave, then it would start accruing leave from this date, and it would add it to this closing balance. Obviously, if you've set it up to not accrue leave, so maybe they got the leave balance up front, then this leave balance would stay like this until the end of the cycle, in which case they would get a new entitlement. Obviously, there would be changes based on whether the employee is actually taking leave or not.
Okay. And that's it? What else do we need to do?
Okay, well, it depends. So there might be a situation where you don't have this closing balance at a particular date.
Okay.
Right. In that case, then you would use these middle columns, and these columns would then be used to help you calculate that balance.
Okay.
So I'm quickly going to delete this just to show you what I mean.
All right, because we wouldn't need the closing balance override in this situation.
Yeah, so let's say that
Cool.
I'm a business that I've been capturing leave balances, or I've been capturing leave manually, and maybe I don't have a system. Really, I just get employees to fill out forms when they take leave. And so because they're filling out forms manually, I don't actually keep track of their balance on a day-to-day basis. I maybe do a reconciliation at the end of the year or something along those lines. In that case, then you can use the SimplePay system to actually calculate that balance for you. So again,
can you take us through? Oh, perfect. You're going to do it.
Again, you'd start with the end of the take-on period. So again, I'm going to just select the 28th of February as the end of the take-on period as my starting point.
Perfect.
All right, and then you'll see that we've got cycle start date and cycle end date. Now, the cycle start date you'll see is different for every employee over here. And this refers to what is the current leave cycle that this employee is in. And that's for annual leave, because remember, we're dealing with annual leave.
Right.
And this is based on how you've set up your leave type. So for annual leave, by default, it's set up that the leave cycle runs from the appointment date. So Tinkerbell, for example, her appointment date was the 1st of May 2015. So that means that her leave cycle always starts on the 1st of May every single year. So the current leave cycle is the 1st of May 2021 up until the 30th of April 2022. You'll then see the system, what it does next is it looks at, okay, this is the end of the take-on period, and this is the cycle start date. So it's going to calculate how much leave should have accrued from the start of the cycle until the end of the take-on period.
Okay.
Now, for Tinkerbell, if you go to the leave settings and you go and have a look at what leave policy Tinkerbell is on, Tinkerbell gets 24 days of annual leave per leave cycle or per year for annual leave. So, and that is set up to accrue per month. So that's an accrual of 2 days per month. So if you had to calculate from the 1st of May until the 28th of February, that's 10 months that have elapsed, and the 10 months multiplied by the 2 days per month then gives you the 20 days.
Right. So that's also a good way of seeing that the settings we've configured is as we expect, because the system is now calculating it and showing us that Tinkerbell has accrued these 20 days.
Exactly. So you can also check to see that Tinkerbell's actually on the correct leave policy based on the accrual that's been calculated.
Okay.
All right. Then we've got this brought forward from a previous cycle. So this is the next field that you can fill in. And if there's any leave that was from the previous cycle that was allowed to be carried over to this cycle, you would enter that year. So in other words, for Tinkerbell, if before the 1st of May 2021, if there was leave from prior to that, that she was allowed to bring into the cycle, then you would enter that year. So maybe that would be 3, in which case you'll see my closing balance calculated has now changed to be 23. Which
so it updates automatically. Cool.
Exactly.
Quick question.
Right, do that for everybody. Yes.
Where your cursor is, or slightly above your cursor, for Peter Pan, it's the accrual and the brought forward from previous cycle, the columns you just explained, that is grayed out. Is there a way to ungrade that out, or what does that mean?
So remember that the system is set up to be intuitive, and if you have configured your leave settings so that leave cannot be carried forward from one cycle to the next, then this would be grayed out because you cannot bring leave from the previous cycle into this cycle. So that's why it's grayed out every year, because that's the leave policy that Peter Pan is on.
Okay, got you.
All right, the next section to then complete is the taken section. So we've got one section that, or one column that is taken plus adjustments, and then we've got another one that is taken not on the calendar. So this is all the leave that has been taken by this employee between the period of their cycle start date and the end of the take-on period. So for Tinkerbell, any leave that was taken between the 1st of May 2021 and the 28th of February 2022. Now the one is auto-populated, so this taken plus adjustments, this is auto-populated by anything that you've already recorded on the SimplePay calendar. So maybe you joined SimplePay and you're experimenting and starting to record some of this employee's leave on the calendar, or maybe there was an overlap between using your old system and SimplePay, in which case you might have recorded some of the days on the calendar, and that would then appear over here like it does with Wendy Darling. And then we've got the taken not on the calendar, and this is any leave days that you haven't recorded on the SimplePay calendar. So if you've got, for example, those leave forms, you'd go through those leave forms and say, okay, how many leave days did this employee take between this period? Add them together, and let's say that was 12, in which case you'll see that the closing balance calculated would then be reduced by the taken amount. So in both instances, all right, both these columns reduce this closing balance calculated amount.
Great. I like that it updates that automatically. That's very helpful.
Cool.
If I understand this correctly, then we then don't need to use that final closing balance override column because we've already got that calculated. Is that correct?
Exactly, right? So you're either going to be using this closing balance calculated by the system, or you're going to be using the closing balance override. If you enter an amount into the closing balance override, the system's going to ignore what it's calculated and only use the figure that you've entered. right? But remember that the whole purpose of this middle section is to help you calculate it. So in those instances, you don't have the closing balance. So the system would then use this figure as its starting point.
Got you. Okay, perfect. And then, as always, we need to highlight that you should save before doing anything else.
Save is at the top.
Saving is very, very important. I think it might be time for our next poll. Yay! So in a few brief moments, you'll see a poll pop up on your screen. And this is to test if you've been listening, because it's on leave take-ons. That's right, you thought you were out of school. No? So if I know the leave balances of employees when capturing leave take-ons, I need only populate end of take-on period and closing balance override. It's 50-50, so we'll give you a little bit of time to pick and choose. You can phone a friend if you want, pop a message in the chat. Now that's cheating. Cool. So your results should be coming up shortly. Ooh. So a whopping a lot of people, so 93% have said that that's true. But there's contention because there were a few answers that said false.
Okay, so just to clarify, if you do have the employees' leave balances at a specific date, then you do only need the end of the take-on period column and the closing balance override column. So in that instance, the answer would be true. We try and make your life as easy as possible, right? So if you've got the balance at a particular date, then you only need to fill in those columns. If you don't have the balances for your employees, we're going to help you do it, right? The system's going to help you calculate it.
Cool. Thanks, Brandon. And well done to everyone for the poll. So I have a situation where I don't think it probably won't relate to the closing balance override or something we'd enter there, but I have an employee that has done exceptionally well and I want to reward them, but I want to reward them with 1 day of leave. But this is a once-off. They won't get this once a month or once a year. It's just a one-time award that says, thank you so much for your hard work. What do I do? Where do I enter that?
Okay, so just to clarify, you've got an employee that for some reason you want to give them some kind of reward, but the reward is not sort of financial in nature, it's leave-based. You want to give them a leave day as a reward and you want to know how to record that.
I need them out the office for 1 day, yeah.
Okay, all right, so that would be a good opportunity to use leave adjustments.
Okay.
So again, leave adjustments can be done in bulk or individually. So if you had to do it in bulk, it would also be employees, bulk actions, look for the leave section, and then you're looking for adjustments. But because you said it's just for one employee, I'm going to do it individually. So let's go to employees, and then which employee would you like to give a bonus leave day to?
Wendy Darling, because she's
Wendy
so sweet.
Darling. Okay, sure. All right, so Wendy Darling. So here's Wendy Darling's profile. And at the top of the screen, you'll see the leave menu item. And then we go down to adjustments. Just before I click on that, do note there is the take-on section that I was referring to earlier. So if you did want to capture take-on balances individually, you can do that from their profile as well. It will look slightly different because you're not going to have all of the employees' names. Instead, you would have all of the different leave types that you can capture take-on balances for this particular employee. Okay, but back to adjustments. So I click on adjustments and then I am given the leave adjustments page with all of the leave types. And this includes the leave type or any leave type that you have added to the system. So in one of the previous episodes, we had added study leave. So you'll see that in the leave adjustments section as well. And then you simply click on add. When you click on add, you'll be given 3 fields. So you've got the date field, the amount field, and the description field. I'm going to start by entering a date for this adjustment.
And that date, Brandon, what does that refer to?
Okay, so this date refers to, or could refer to maybe the date that you're making the announcement of the adjustment. So the date that you actually want the adjustment to take effect, or it could refer to maybe the date that this employee worked really hard and that's the day that you want the adjustment to take effect. It's not the date that they'll be taking the leave, right? Remember, that gets recorded on the leave calendar by either the leave admin or the admin, or it can be recorded via self-service if the employee has access to self-service or the mobile app. So in this instance, let's say that we announce to Wendy that on the 16th, we're giving you this leave day. All right, then we're going to enter the amount. So I'm going to put in 1 day over here because we want to adjust the leave balance by 1 day. So remember, this is not an override, right? This is an adjustment. So if I'm entering 1 year, I'm not overriding the balance to be 1. So if it was 13 or 7 or whatever it might be, it's not going to be 1. It's just an adjustment. So if I enter 1 and their balance was 13, it's now going to go up to 14. The adjustment, yes. So whatever amount here, you're adjusting the leave balance. So if I had to enter a 1 year, you're adjusting it by 1. If I had to enter -1, you then adjusting downwards by 1. So if it was 7 days and you put in -1, then it's going to be 6 days. If it was 7 days and you enter +1, and it's going to go up to 8 days.
Okay.
Okay, so in this instance, we want to reward Wendy with 1 day. So I'm going to add 1. And then we're going to enter a description of why we're making this adjustment. So in this instance, and remember, this doesn't show to the employee, so this is for your purposes, so for your use. So whatever is useful to you, enter this over here. So I'm going to enter.
She just gets the day. She doesn't know why.
She'll see the adjustment on the payslip, so she'll see the adjustment amount, but she won't see the description.
Okay,
right,
cool.
so you can use this then for administrative purposes.
Perfect.
Okay, so bonus day is my description. And then if you are done with the adjustments, then you simply click on Save Changes.
Cool. Save changes, not add. Is that?
Well, if you clicked on Add, then you could add another adjustment if you wanted to.
Okay, cool. Perfect.
All right.
Thanks, Brandon.
Save Changes?
Yes.
And
so,
there we go.
There's the bonus day. Nice. A quick one on what is leave adjustment. So in this scenario, we're awarding someone with an extra day. What happens in a situation where I've noticed that there's a mistake with the employees' leave balances, or maybe I've looked at a report or I've looked at the data and I've seen that there's a mistake somewhere.
Okay, so are you asking if you can use leave adjustments to make that correction?
Well, I'm wondering if that is the best way to make a correction, yeah.
Okay, so I have seen a lot of people or a lot of companies use leave adjustments to make a correction. That would be my last resort as a recommendation. So I always recommend that you go to the source of what is causing the error. So if, for example, it's an error in the way that the leave entitlement policy was set up, or if it's an error in the way that the leave type was set up, or an error in the take-on balances, then go to the source and go and make that correction. And the reason I say that is because if you use leave adjustments, it's going to make that adjustment to the balance. But if the settings are incorrect, that could carry through to a subsequent leave cycle, and then that error could reoccur. So you want to make sure that you go to the source and do the correction there, and only use leave adjustments to correct it if it makes sense to actually do so.
Okay.
All right.
No, that makes sense, especially because, like you said, you don't want to keep seeing the same error over and over again. It's better to
Yes, you don't want to make an adjustment and then
another adjustment.
And then another adjustment and then another adjustment every year because there's something off with your leave entitlement policy, the way it's been set up.
Okay. No, that definitely makes sense. Thanks.
Sure.
This is slightly unrelated.
Okay.
But I have an employee whose service has been terminated, or they've decided to leave the company. What happens to their leave? What does the system do to calculate that? If it needs to be paid out or only a portion gets paid out? I'm just curious as to see what the system does.
Okay, so the system does have the option to pay leave out. So we do have a payslip item to pay leave out if you would like to pay leave out. When I say would like to, I mean it depends on the legislation for your country. So that's also the reason why we don't add it automatically, because there might be a particular reason that leave is not paid out in your country. So always try and make sure that you are compliant with the legislation. So as an example, in South Africa, it does state in the Basic Conditions of Employment Act that we should be paying leave out if employees are leaving the company. And that's the only instance in which you should be paying leave out. You shouldn't be paying it out on an annual basis. But again, check with the legislation in your country in order to do that. Shall I show you quickly how to add the leave paid out system item?
I'd love that. Please do.
Okay, sure. So you simply go to employees on the left-hand side and then find the employee that is leaving the company. So let's say in this instance, it's Captain Hook. Maybe he's not a good team player, so he's leaving the company. And then you're going to process this payslip item under the payroll section. Now remember that only admins have access to payroll information. So a leave admin won't be able to process leave paid out, only someone with admin access. And this is not a regular item that you're going to be paid out. It's a once-off item that you're paying to the employee. So it's going to be under payslip inputs. So I'm going to click on add. And then over here under the income section, you'll see the system item for leave paid out. Then you'll see this over here that says annual leave encashed. So this is the leave balance that has been calculated by the system at this particular date. So you'll see the date at the top says the 30th of June, and that's according to your latest payslip. And then you've got the days, and you simply click on save, and there you'll see the leave paid out system item.
Brandon, you mentioned that that's the current payslip. I just want to make sure that I understand this correctly. So when we say that's the latest payslip, it means that anything prior to June, those payslips have been what we call finalized, and that means that we've paid the employee. Okay, cool.
Yeah, so if I look at my drop-down menu, you'll see that the prior payslips are finalized, and because I'm adding this payslip item to the 30th of June, the system's going to calculate the leave balance up until the 30th of June for me.
Okay, cool. If you wouldn't mind just going, oh, no, sorry, you go.
If you did end the employee service midway in the month, then you would obviously end their service first, and then the system would calculate what is the leave balance up until the end of their service period.
Right. Thanks. If you could just go back to leave paid out, there was an override button. In a situation where there is an agreement between the employer and the employee, or for whatever reason, that not all of the leave is paid out to the employee, is that override button where we would put that information?
Yes, so the override button can be used to change the number of leave days here that you want to pay out. So like you said, maybe there's an agreement where you say, okay, we only pay out half, and maybe a government body pays out the other half, or like a trade union or a bargaining council or something like that. Or maybe you have got in your contracts that it says we will pay up to the nearest day. So if it's 15.6667 days, then you would pay out 16, in which case you just click on override and then you can enter the amount. So let's say we're only paying out 10 days, and then you simply click on save, and the leave paid out will then be adjusted accordingly.
Okay. How is the system calculating that? How did we get to that number or that amount?
Okay, so the leave paid out amount is the number of leave days multiplied by the rate per hour, so the employee's leave rate per hour, multiplied by the number of hours that they work in a day. So that's the calculation. We'll multiply all the three together and then calculate that for you.
And is there a way to see that rate, or maybe even change it?
Okay, so if you want to see that rate, you can go to leave, click on record taken. Again, you do need to be an admin user to be able to see this. And if you scroll to the bottom, you'll see here it says annual leave rate per hour, and we've got a base rate and a fluctuating rate, and the two together will give you the total rate per hour.
What is the fluctuating rate?
So the fluctuating rate is any fluctuating income that an employee earns. So maybe the employee earns commission, then in that case, that would influence the fluctuating rate, because it's something that it's not fixed, it changes from a month-to-month basis. So SimplePay would look at the last 3 months pay slips and determine the fluctuating rate based on that. Whereas the base rate is based on either the hourly rate for the employee, so if you enter an hourly rate, if they are hourly paid, or it's based on their salary. So we would look at their fixed salary, we'd look at the hours that you've entered under regular working hours, and we determine the base rate for you based on that.
And if we want to change that rate, is that entered under the custom fluctuating rate field?
So it depends
Or
what
would you
you're
do?
trying to do with the rate. So if you are trying to change the rate for the purposes of leave paid out, I wouldn't change it under the custom fluctuating rate section. Instead, I'd
Okay.
actually just go and change it on the leave paid out item. So go to the leave paid out,
Okay.
and then there's an option to override the calculated rate. So maybe there's an agreement in your contract that say we pay all employees out at 250 Rand per hour, in which case you'd enter 250 Rand and then
No
save.
changes.
And again, the system would recalculate the leave paid out.
Perfect. And then if we want to go to like the next employee who's also, we need to give their leave paid out, the easiest way, that would be just to click on the arrow, the up and down arrow next to Captain Hook's name, right?
Yes, so you can use the arrow, or you can go and process it in bulk if you want to go do that.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. Another slightly off-topic question, but I often need to send reports to management with very specific information. So maybe just the number of leave days that someone has taken, or the specific days that one employee has taken leave. I'm just wondering if you'd maybe go through one or two of the reports that I might need.
Okay, sure. So we do have a reports option on the sidebar menu. So if you click on reports, there are 3 leave reports that are relevant. So the one is the leave days report. The other one is the leave report. And then we've got a leave liabilities report.
Right.
So the leave days report shows you the actual leave days that were taken in a specific period. So if you wanted to see what dates leave were taken, then we've got a leave report, which gives you an overview of the leave activity during a particular period. So it will show you actually, I might as well just show you that report in a moment. And then we've got the leave liabilities report, and this is based on the leave paid out. So if all of your employees had to resign, or maybe the company's closing and you had to pay out leave all at once, then this is the amount that you would owe to your employees at a particular date.
Awesome.
Let me quickly show you that leave report, and the other reports work in a very similar way in terms of how you download them. So at the top, you've got your filters, which allow you to tell the system who do I want this report for? Is it for a particular department or particular pay frequency? Then we've got a date range. So let's say that I want the report for the first half of the year. I'm magical, I'm working into the future, the 30th of June. And you can then include additional fields if you wish to do so.
Cool.
And then finally, you need to tell the system what is the leave type or types that you want to include in the report. So in this instance, let's say that we want annual leave, and then you simply click on Show Excel or Show PDF. I always like to use Excel because I can then highlight, I can make comments, I can do calculations. And there's my Excel report. It's a bit small. Okay, and here you'll see an overview of the leave activity. So you'll see for Tinkerbell, it's broken down per month. What is the accrual? What is the entitlement? How much leave or how many leave days were taken? Again, it's going to be a summary. It's not going to be the actual leave days that you would see on the leave days report.
Okay.
Any adjustments? So remember, we did an adjustment for Wendy Darling, so that's showing over there. Any leave that was available from the previous cycle, and then the calculated leave balance for the employee.
Perfect. Thanks, Brandon. Those reports will be really, really, really handy for management. So
Definitely.
Thanks so much for taking us through leave adjustments and take-ons and reports today. You can join us next time for, as Jamie said, employee self-service. And I would love to to show you as one last poll before I hand over to Jamie for Q&A. So in a few seconds, you'll see the poll pop on your screen. And this one is about leave paid out. So when terminating an employee service, the system automatically calculates the value and amount of leave due to the employee. And we've given you a 50-50 chance of getting it right. So is it true or is it false? We'll just give you a few moments and then we'll tell you if you got it right. Cool. Well, that's really good. So almost everyone said that's true. Just a few people said false. Brandon?
Okay, so the question is, when terminating an employee's service, the system automatically calculates the value and amount of leave due to the employee. So the system does have the ability to do that, provided that you add the leave paid out system item to the employee's payslip. So I guess it depends on how you interpreted the question. If you interpreted it as being automatically added to the payslip, then in that instance you might have said false, but the system does have that ability, in which case you might have said true.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brandon. That was great.
No problem.
I'm going to hand over to Jamie and Desmond.
Perfect. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Kylie and Brandon.